recently collaborating with over 50 organizations globally to develop the document Future-Proofing the Longevity Economy, Innovations and Key Trends. She also leads the forum's Women in Finance community, which brings together leaders across financial services, identifying action-oriented solutions that can be amplified by the WEF. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Haleh Nazary.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. I didn't realize we were going to be rated on our session, so now I'm a little nervous. Unlike the Prime Minister, I'm going to be using slides to talk about what we're going to be doing today because it is such a huge topic. But first, I want to thank everyone for inviting me today. It's my first time in Kuala Lumpur, and it's been wonderful. So thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to begin by talking about the world's demographics. They are changing. I'm going to be sharing some numbers on here with you. I know we talk a lot about how Asia is aging rapidly, but it is actually happening all around the world. In the US, for example, more than 4.1 million Americans are turning 65 each year through 2027. That is 11,200 people each day. Across OECD countries, fertility rates have declined from 1.98 in 1990 to 1.51 in 2022. That is 27% below the level required to maintain a stable population size. Brazil will have the world's 5th largest population of seniors by 2030. Continental Europe is projected to be only 4% of the world's population by 2070. Half of the global population growth from now to 2050 will occur in sub-Saharan Africa. 70% of sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 30. In China, the population is projected to shrink from 1.4 billion now to 1.3 billion in 2050 and below 800 million by 2100. And in South Korea, they are projected to become the world's most aged country by 2044. The number of people in their 70s exceeded those in their 20s for the first time in 2023. Now, these are big numbers, but this is just to put into context what it is we're dealing with here. And I'm delighted to be here to talk about this topic, but I'd like to say that the way we talk about it at the World Economic Forum is as an opportunity, and that's really how I see it here. So when I was reflecting on the title, I wished we could change it to Living to 100. How do we prepare? Because it really is a magnificent advancement in global health that we're able to live these longer lives. And what we'd really like to do is talk about this as an opportunity rather than a challenge. And the way we do that is by changing the narrative for the 21st century. We are thinking with a 20th century mindset for a 21st century issue. We believe the propaganda that the generations do not get along and one is taking from the other is nonsense. That is just not true. The only way that we can think about longevity is through an intergenerational lens, with all of us working together, focusing on what we can achieve and accomplish. As the Prime Minister said, 70 really is the new 50. A recent IMF article shared that a person who was 70 in 2022 had the same cognitive health score as a 53-year-old in 2000. People want to do more, but there is a lack of imagination of what that could look like. And finally, we want to focus on the fact that aging is not a disease. Aging is not a burden to overcome. It is an advantage. It is a positive result of decades of amazing health advancements. Instead of treating our older population as a burden, or a silver tsunami that we must tame, why can't we change the discourse and call it what it is, a new demographic advancement that could be the engine for future growth? The way we do this is by transforming systems for this new century. We need to start thinking about new structures. The problem is that our institutions and policies were built and designed for a 70-year life. It is time for new thinking around everything from the way we work, to financing our retirement, to caregiving to lifelong learning. We need to think about new innovations. I love this graph. This is one of my favorite graphs that we have seen that really shows exactly what is on with the global population. In 1950, we were just a small little triangle. And in 100 years, it has morphed into something else. And that's what we need to think about when we're thinking about what we need to do with our structures. We need to create innovative and a more productive future that is intergenerational, sustainable, and inclusive of people who were left behind the first time that pension and retirement systems were created almost 100 years ago. And we need to have new ideas to focus on the opportunities and the big ideas that can make it happen. We have to reflect on the question, what does the 100-year-old life need in order to thrive and flourish? These are the questions we've been considering at the World Economic Forum, where I lead the longevity economy work, and I'm thrilled to do so. We created a set of longevity economy principles several years ago. And the reason we did this is because we think this is a big issue that needs to be elevated on the global stage. We think it is just as important as climate change, just as important as geopolitics. But it's such a big issue that we didn't quite know how people were going to talk about it. So we created basically a framework around which to discuss it. We gathered our partners, and first we created about 43 principles, realizing that was far too big. And we whittled it down to 6, and we launched it last year at the annual meeting in Davos. I'm going to be sharing what those 6 principles are with you today and going over why we think they're relevant and important. So the first one is ensure financial resilience across key life events. So we're going to do a little quiz, if that's okay, to see how much you know about each of these 6 principles. So you could just raise your hand or yell it out if you want. If there were a sudden loss of income, approximately blank % of people would run out of savings within a month. So is it A, 15%, B, 30%, C, 40%, or D, 50%? Just shout it out. It's D, 50%. 50% of people would run out of savings within a month. That is why this was the very first principle that we put forward. Key life events, both planned and unplanned, can push individuals to financial hardship and, in extreme cases, the brink of poverty. According to the OECD, if there were a loss of income, approximately half of people would run out of savings within a month, and 28% would run out within a week. We think this is one of the most crucial principles we have to focus on going forward when considering the longevity economy. The second one is also focused on finances. It is to provide universal access to impartial financial education. It is critical. And when we talk about financial education, we think about it in a broader sense of the world. We include longevity literacy as well as financial literacy. So for this one, what % of the adult population in Malaysia is considered financially literate? Is it A, 12%, B, 36%, C, 45%, or D, 57%? It's B, 36%. However, congratulations, you are still ahead of most of the world. There's only 1 in 3 people who are considered financially literate. That's approximately 33% of people, and that's according to the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center. In an OECD study across 26 countries, 42% of individuals worry about meeting their everyday living expenses, and 37% are financially just getting by. This is a huge problem. We need to transform systems and support individuals. To do that, we need system guardrails, we need behavioral economics, and just-in-time financial education to be integrated into the development of financial ecosystems. While the individual retains freedom in decision-making, systems should be designed to help them thrive. So those are the first 2 of the principles. They're both focused on finances, but the third one is focused on something just as critical, and that is preventative health and healthy aging. We need to prioritize healthy aging as foundational for the longevity economy. The average global health span lifespan gap is blank years. And just for everyone, lifespan is how long you live. So let's say 70. Health span is how long you live in good health. So what is the answer? Is it A, 1.5, B, 3.2, C, 5.8, or D, 9.6? Shout it out. It's D, 9.6, almost 10 years in ill health. While the average life expectancy has risen significantly over the past decades, 1/5 of an individual's life is expected to be lived in a state of illness. Increases in lifespan have not been matched by increases in health span. This is a huge problem and gets us back to the first two principles, because what winds up happening is people spend all of their money on their health. 80% of adults in developing countries are worried about not having sufficient financial means to meet future medical expenses. And those who experience chronic health conditions, that's about 60% in the United States, struggle to accumulate wealth and save for retirement. So instead of saving for retirement, they're just trying to keep themselves healthy. That is a problem. Our fourth principle is around an age-inclusive workforce, which is going to be critical as we live longer. So it is to evolve jobs and lifelong skill building for a multi-generational workforce. There are going to be 5 generations working side by side in the future. So this question, in high-income economies, there's a potential blank in untapped annual GDP from not employing older adults looking for work. Is it A, 900 billion, B, 5 trillion, C, 2 trillion, or D, 8 trillion? It's B, $5 trillion. That's a lot of money. Across the globe, more people are retiring or exiting the workforce than are joining. Approximately 25% of adults aged 55 plus would like to work in old age, but are not currently doing so, citing lack of opportunity and difficulties finding a job. In high-income economies alone, there is a potential $5 trillion in incremental annual GDP that remains untapped by not employing older workers looking for work. We're not saying people have to work longer. We're saying if people want to work longer, make that path for them easier. Allow them to come back to work. Let's really actually also focus on ageism that is quite rampant still. And the other thing we have to embrace is technology. Reskilling workers as they grow through the organization will be critical as businesses transform to embrace new technology and AI. I'm 12 minutes in. That's the first time I used AI. I'm happy about that. Our fifth one is to design systems and environments for social connection and purpose. We think this is absolutely critical. When my friends ask me what I do differently now that I focus on this work for the last several years, they all expect me to say I invest differently or focus on my finances, but this is actually the one that's really changed for me. We all know, well, hopefully we all know that we need to save for retirement. I have my 401k. I do focus on my health. But I have really doubled down on this one, ensuring that I have a community around me as I get older who can help me and support me throughout the years. So this question, lack of purpose and social connection has been linked to A, higher risk of developing functional and cognitive disabilities, B, a higher risk of depression, C, shorter lifespans, and D, all of the above. It is D, all of the above. Social isolation is associated with a 50% increased risk of dementia and significantly increases a person's risk of premature death. 78% of older workers in the United States indicate that they have seen or experienced workplace age discrimination. This is where we get back to ageism. Imagine if you do have a purpose, you do want to go back to work, but you can't because of ageist policies. Finally, this is something that the East knows much better than we do in the West, but this ikigai, this sense of purpose. Older adults with a motivating force, a sense of purpose, have a 31% lower risk of developing functional disability and a 36% lower risk of dementia. That and alone should make us want to seek more purpose in our lives. Our final principle is the one that I'm quite passionate about, and that is intentionally addressing longevity inequalities across gender, race, and class. This is our final quiz for the day. Across the OECD, women receive 15% less retirement income than men. Is it true or false? It is false. They receive 25% less retirement. Exactly. benefits of longevity are not felt equally. Higher income individuals are experiencing gains in life expectancy, while lower income groups face stagnancy or decline. Within and across countries, the richest on average can live up to 30 years longer than the poorest. This is from one neighborhood to the other in certain places. This is a triple storm for women. Women aged 65 and over receive 26% less retirement income compared to men. What we're dealing with is that we live longer than men, approximately 5 years. We make less money than men, so we have less in savings. And increasingly, we are the one who are the caregivers and will leave the workforce to take care of either our children or our parents. And that's part of the problem with the informal caregiving. It can perpetuate a cycle of economic insecurity. Disparities persist in the provision of unpaid informal caregivers, elder care. 30% of informal caregivers from low-income households are providing daily care, impacting their own ability to save for their own futures in older age. These were the 6 principles we created. What we wanted to do was to raise the profile of this topic, and it really worked. We have been able to do that. More people are talking about the topic. And the other thing we wanted to do, because we had a lot of private sector engagement in the topic, but we wanted more public sector engagement. We wanted the governments in the room to talk about this too, and we succeeded, and we're very excited for that. So what we decided to do next is to double-click on the economic implications. And we went and we focused on 5 key trends of the longevity economy, what we really have to look out for going forward. But we didn't just want to list the problems. What we also did is show the countries, the companies, and the organizations that are really doing it right and are innovating and thinking about new ways of developing this. So 5 trends. We're going to start off with the first one.